And what people don't realize is the masters of meditation know that every meditation is a gentle drifting back and forth between whatever the object of your attention is, whether that's your breath or a mantra or something else. As you cultivate your ability, and that means showing up every day, you spend a little less time in thought land and a little more time in breath or mantra land. That's it, And so what we're doing is we're cultivating our ability to witness. So when we open our eyes, now I can witness the world with a lot less reactivity. I won't take things so personally. I'll be more impeccable with my word. Suddenly we start to realize that it's a gentle, loving, sweet process.
This is episode number 97 of The Inspiring Talk with Davidji. Welcome guys to The Inspiring Talk. My name is Bijay Gautam. I'm your host for this show. Each week I interview today's most successful and inspiring personalities to help you realize your inner potential. If you have been listening to this podcast for a while, you know that a lot of my guests talk about meditation and how it has helped them. Personally, I have been very, very regular with my meditation practice for the last couple of months, and I love it. This episode is going to be your complete guide or masterclass to meditation, as I'm honored to have with me someone who has not only mastered the art of meditation, but also has taught millions of people across the world. My guest for this episode, Davidji, was COO and lead educator at Chopra Center, set up by Deepak Chopra and David Simon, where he has trained over 300,000 people and certified more than 2,500 meditation teachers. Davidji is one of the most prolific creators of the guided meditations with over 1,000 practices available across the platforms. I'm a huge fan of Davidji's guided meditation practices, and I came across his work on a meditation app called Insight Timer. He has authored 3 books, including the latest one, Sacred Powers, The 5 Secrets to Awakening Transformation. In our conversation, we discuss why should you start meditation, some of the common myths around meditation, how can you start meditation without getting overwhelmed, and Davidji even shares a 16-second powerful meditation practice that you can start today. This is one of the most insightful episodes of the show. Enjoy the conversation. Davidji, thank you so much for being on the show.
Thank you for inviting me, and I'm honored. Namaste, and thank you for all the work that you do to share these powerful conversations with the world.
Thank you so much, Davidji. It's truly my honor to have you on the show. And I have been meditating to your guided meditation on Insight Timer for a while now. And I love the practice that you have there on the Insight Timer. And my personal favorite is Surrender to the Silence Within. And also another one that I do is your morning daily practice that you have. So, Davidji, you started, your career as a finance guy, merger and acquisition and all that world. And then you left that and eventually you became the COO of Chopra Center and you were lead educator there. And then now you went into share your own practices, which is streamed by millions of people across the platform from SoundCloud to Insight Timer and YouTube and where not. So, how did you get into meditation? What was your introduction to meditation?
It's interesting. I started meditating when I was in college. It was the first time I had really been exposed to it. It was an experimental Asian studies course, and there were 12 of us. And it was my first introduction to meditation. We were studying a lot of philosophy and theory, and then suddenly we were told, well, this is how you do it. You have to do the practice also. And so we would sit in a circle. Our Zen master stood in the corner. We were instructed to raise our hands when we had a thought come into our awareness In his hands, he carried an 18-inch bamboo stick known as a keisaku, and he would come over and hit us on the back when we raised our hands. So I stopped raising my hand every time I had a thought, and then I said, I don't really like this meditation thing. It's pretty painful. So after 2 weeks, I left that, and then I began sort of like a journey because I liked the feeling, I liked the experience, and I liked the impact of it when I wasn't meditating. That was really the key. It's not like having a drink and then you're sort of drunk or high or whatever. When you meditate, the magnificence and the beauty of meditation shows up in the rest of your day. And that's the power of meditation. So many people are looking for the experience in the actual sitting with your eyes closed doing nothing. That's sometimes that can be exciting and fun, but really the premise and the magnificence is when suddenly your eyes are open and you're back here with the rest of us and you're walking around and you're interacting with people, and maybe you're a little more patient, maybe you're a little more creative, maybe you're a little kinder to yourself and to other people. Suddenly you start to be a little more reflective instead of reflexive. You're a little more thoughtful instead of thoughtless. And that gets woven into every aspect of who we are. So whether we're sending a text, whether we're having a really important or intense conversation, whether we're doing our job, there's sort of just like a little bit of space in there. Sort of like we've given our mind permission to take a breath. And, the fact that this stuff can be perceived as a little kooky or a little weird, but, you go back to the Rig Veda, you go back to the Bhagavad Gita. And oh, by the way, Gandhi read it every day. Einstein read it every day. Emerson read it every day. I mean, it's not like it's like this obscure thing that no one paid attention to. And so these 18 chapters are this magnificent deep dive into all the questions we could ever ask. And at some point, actually, it's chapter 2, verse 48. Well, prior to that, Arjuna says, oh my God, if you're really God, then maybe you could fill me in on some insights here. And they talk about life and death and purpose and meaning and love and why are we here, and like all the really, really deep questions. And at one point, he asks he asks Krishna, how am I supposed to walk through the world? How am I supposed to live my life? And in chapter 2, verse 48, Krishna replies, Yogastha kuru karmani. Yogastha kuru karmani. Yogastha means establish yourself in the present moment. Essentially, get still. Kuru karmani, and then perform action. And there I was. This is 20 years ago. I'm laying in a hammock in a cashew forest in Kerala, and I'm just like hanging out there, listening to all the parrots chirp and stuff like that. And I'm reading the Gita for probably the 5,000th time. But suddenly, as I was laying there, and I read that particular verse, that sloka, I was like, oh my God, that's it. Establish yourself in the present moment. And that hit me like a lightning bolt. And that everything became clear to me. And, I had already spent like 6 months in India searching for the guru. I was meditating every day and practicing yoga. I was bathing in the Ganges. I was visiting the temples. I had visited the Nadi, the Jyotish Nadi. I had gone up into Dharamsala to see His Holiness, the Dalai Lama. He wasn't there that day. And and I had, I've been into the Himalayas. I was in Rishikesh, in Delhi, and in Jaipur, and Agra, and down into Tamil Nadu, like all these places. And suddenly I read that and suddenly realized, oh my God, here I have been searching so hard to find the answers to life and to find all the meaning out there. And like, duh, the answer rests inside. In fact, the answer to every single question you could ever ask rests deep inside. You just have to quiet down the fluctuations of the mind just enough, just a little bit, so you can hear the whispers in your heart, so you could hear the whispers of God. And that was it for me. That was my lightning bolt. And I raced back to New York. And several weeks later, a friend of mine said, dude, all you do is sit around and meditate. And I was like, I know. Isn't it amazing? It's like 4 or 5 hours a day.
Wow.
And he said, well, I know you love it, but you should probably teach other people to meditate. And I said to him, come on, I'm from New York. I don't care about anyone else's meditation. And he said, well, if you really want to learn something, learn to teach it. And so I headed out to California to visit the Chopra Center at the time, Deepak Chopra and Dr. David Simon. They were the founders of it. And it was an instant love connection. I went out there for a workshop on Ayurveda and ended up, they hired me on the third day to be the COO. And so I never went back home.
Wow.
I just, went to that, suddenly. And so over 10 years, I had the ridiculous privilege to be apprenticing under Deepak Chopra and under David Simon, traveling the world with them, teaching meditation. And I got certified. And as my meditation game elevated, that's what I did. So we would travel around. Deepak would talk about all of his mind-body healing expertise, and David Simon would talk about his area that he wanted to talk about, and I'd be the person who would lead the meditation and teach everyone the meditation. So I really got to the point where I was teaching meditation every single day, and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people, no matter where we were. And I really got the opportunity to really listen to people. What stands in the way? What are their experiences? What do they like? What was the impact in their life? What were the blockages and excuses people were making for not meditating? And that really allowed me to up my game. And as I taught and taught and taught, I became a better listener. And so I think that's
awesome.
one of the keys to being a better teacher is to listen a little more.
So yeah, very fascinating. So I picked a couple of points. So the first part where you talk about, when you meditate and people are like, thinking about, hey, you know what, nothing's happening when I'm there on my meditation practice for 5 to 7 minutes or 10 minutes, nothing's happening. And like, as I was telling you before the recording, that I have been on and off meditator for 3-4 years now, but I have started regularly meditating, after the whole Corona and lockdown stuff, because, I have more time now. But what I have realized, as you mentioned, is I have become more calmer and more kind. And throughout the day, I am constantly being aware of my actions at multiple point of time. I won't say like throughout the day, but there are like several instances during the day where I'm aware of, my act or something that I'm typing or, whatever I'm doing, like I'm becoming more aware of the thing, right? So that's one. Second thing, that really fascinated me from the whole journey that you shared is your encounter with the Bhagavad Gita. And Bhagavad Gita is so ingrained in Indian culture. And yet, like a lot of us here in India, do not refer to that text. And, you being someone coming from US and exploring and then, picking the insights and then sharing out with the world, that's like incredible journey there, davidji. So some of the things that you mentioned, right, while you were working with Deepak and Chopra centers, right? What were some of the things that you discovered and, while teaching, and also now science has proven a lot of benefits of meditation, right? Why should people meditate, basically?
That's a great question. And really one of the true benefits of me spending that time with Deepak and David Simon, Deepak is an MD. David Simon passed away, but he was a neurologist, a brain scientist. And Deepak was practicing at the time endocrinologist. So both of these individuals were really steeped in the science, in the real world, modern scientific benefits. And we used to joke, if you're hit by a car, you don't want to sprinkle some Ayurvedic herbs onto your wound. You need some like real modern science. And so one of the things they always stressed is that if we can find the balance between some of the things that we know to be true, but they're just empirical, they're not actually scientifically proven, and then we can continue to actually prove those things through research and through academic institutions and medical centers and major research. And that's only about 10 years old, this massive new body of meditation research where they'll hook up your brain and then have you meditate, and they'll do there's an amazing study at the University of Massachusetts with Harvard Medical Center where for 56 days they had people meditate and they took MRIs of their brain, magnetic resonance imaging of their brain before, during, and after. And at the end of 56 days, it's only 8 weeks, it's less than 2 months, they found that the gray area in the hippocampus, which is the part of our brain responsible for learning, for memory, for spatial orientation, hand-eye coordination. That just in 56 days, unanimously, everyone in the study increased that area of the brain by more than 5%. So it's not like some random thing that they were doing something else. Simultaneously, all of the test subjects were demonstrated in under 2 months to actually decrease, to shrink the gray matter in their amygdala, which is the part of the brain responsible for fear, anxiety, and anger. So imagine that, that's just showing up for 30 minutes a day, every single day. Vijay, and by the time we're done here, I'm hoping that you're not going to meditate 3 times a week, but you'll meditate every single day because you see the powerful scientific benefits. So what else can it do? Meditation has been proven. And what I'll talk about is just the scientifically proven stuff, because I'm sure you have a bunch of engineers who pay attention to you as well. And they want the science. They want the proof. None of this woo-woo, kooky, dolphin, mermaid, rainbow stuff. If we go back to what happens when we get stressed out, we can go back to the fact that we're all, for over 10,000 years, every single being on the planet has been hardwired with a self-preservation mechanism known as fight-flight. And that's because 10,000 years ago, when we were walking through the jungles of Goa or traveling through some field someplace, and suddenly we sensed a tiger or we suddenly heard rustling in the distance, in under 5 seconds, this self-preservation mechanism kicks in. It's run by our autonomic nervous system. And it says, hey, there's going to be a threat to your physical body. You either need to fight it or run away. So in 5 seconds, your autonomic nervous system, your brain actually prepares you to either fight or run away. First thing that happens is you start to perspire. It's not to make you more slippery. It's because your mind body knows you're probably going to overheat, either fighting or running. And how do we cool off? We sweat. So that's the first thing that happens. Then you start to breathe more shallowly and rapidly, right? Just a little more quickly to start to get the blood flowing. So of course, what does that do? Raises your blood pressure, raises your pulse, and the blood starts flowing faster through the body. Then your autonomic nervous system says, let's shut down everything that's not essential. Let's shut down your sex hormone. You don't need to be thinking about sex right now. Let's shut down your growth hormone because you don't need to be thinking about your skin cells regenerating or anything along those lines. And let's shut down your immune system because you could be dead in the next 10 minutes. So we don't need to be fighting germs. Simultaneously, then it surges adrenaline, cortisol, and glucagon into your body so that you're revved up. All the blood leaves your belly, leaves your torso and your brain and moves into your legs and arms. It's sort of like this thing because you need to be the best in that moment. And then here's the most amazing thing. The platelets, the hard parts of your blood that run through the plasma, become plump and sticky. You actually start clotting in advance of being cut because you might get cut and now you're ready. But fast forward 10,000 years to the present moment, most of us are not facing a mortal threat ever, perhaps in our lives. And so what we've done is we've evolved that, not when we sense a threat to our physical body, but when we sense a threat to our ego. When someone challenges us, when someone teases us, when someone embarrasses us, when someone threatens us, when someone threatens a belief system that you have. Really, it's when anyone challenges something you think you own. Right? So you love this musical group and they say, oh, they suck. What are you talking about? And you suddenly, you get that feeling, or they challenge your religion, or they challenge your politics, or they challenge your belief systems on a greater basis. So suddenly we start to realize, even when we're driving our cars, we think we own our lane, right? Someone comes into our lane. It's like, hey, that's my lane. What are you doing? We think we own 10 feet in front of our car, 10 feet behind our car. Suddenly we start to realize we do a lot of ownership, I, me, mine, as we walk through the world. Anytime that is challenged, you get a little tingle of the same fight-flight response. But you're not going to fight or run away, but you're going to do the emotional version of that fight-flight. So if someone teases you or someone embarrasses you or someone has a really argumentative conversation with you, that same stuff physiologically happens to us chemically and hormonally. So imagine we're 8 to 15 to 20 times a day. This even happens if your router goes down. This happens if suddenly you lose your signal while you're on your computer. You're like, hey, it's supposed to be perfect all the time. What do you mean I've got sketchy Wi-Fi? So, right, we walk around now, we're like these devices, always searching for a signal, always searching for a signal. And so anytime that's challenged as we walk through the world, we can give a gift to somebody and they don't respond appropriately. They just say, hey, thanks for that thing. And you're like, oh my God, I searched for that gift for like 2 weeks. And you just go, or they say, oh, you shouldn't have. And you're like, what do you mean I shouldn't have? I did. And now you're rejecting my gift. So we suddenly realize so many times throughout the course of the day, our needs are not being met. Our needs for attention, affection, appreciation, and acceptance. I call those the 4 A's. Those are like the 4 needs of the heart that we need on a daily basis: attention, affection, appreciation, and acceptance. And when they're not being met, boom, we get the same type of physiological, hormonal, and chemical response going on inside us. Imagine, we're suppressing our immune system. We're plumping and thickening the blood in our body. We're surging sugar. When we surge like cortisol, adrenaline, glucagon is like eating 5 candy bars at once. And so like we're doing that as we walk through the day. It happens like we get an email and suddenly it's the person in the email is mad at us. That whole thing happens to us. So the reason I want to talk about that is because when you meditate, the exact opposite thing happens. You don't perspire, you perspire less. You don't breathe shallowly and rapidly, you breathe more slowly and more deeply. Your blood pressure doesn't rise and your pulse doesn't increase. Your pulse slows down and your blood pressure slows down. And your immune system elevates, your sex hormone elevates. I mean, imagine that. And on top of that, all these other nourishing hormones, your growth hormones, all elevating, and adrenaline, cortisol, and glucagon are suppressed. And your blood doesn't get plump and sticky, it gets more fluid. So like, it's a choice. What do you want going on in your life? Do you want to be responding with all of these, knee-jerk reactions chemically moving through our life? Or can we just like slow down the whole thing? And so what really I have found is that people who meditate on a consistent basis, right? Because Vijay, you don't brush your teeth only 3 times a week. You brush them every day. So I would recommend that we meditate every day as well. People who do this on a consistent basis, it sort of feels like the world is coming at them in slow motion. And so they ultimately, like, what's the benefit? We have a higher likelihood of making better decisions. And I know we would all like to be making better decisions. So it's not a woo-woo spiritual thing. It's like, I want to show up and be a better person and make better choices, more conscious choices. So I think that, the benefits are ridiculous. In addition to better night's sleep, 75% of the planet has sleep issues. 75% of this planet. So imagine if we can suddenly get a good night's sleep. Imagine if we could not finish somebody's sentence. Imagine if we could just be a little more patient and kind to ourselves and to the people who live around us. Imagine the peace that would flow through the world and the better decisions that would elevate this planet. So I think right now in this era of COVID, there is no more essential project that we could work on than self-care. Taking care of ourselves.
Absolutely.
Because this thing will end at some point. And if we're just fat and lazy and stressed out when they sound the all clear, well, that's just pathetic. But if we're a little lighter, if we're just a little clearer, if we're just a little kinder to each other as we re-emerge back into the world, then this will have meant something. Then this will be a powerful step from man and womankind.
Absolutely. So davidji, meditation has got an answer for all these different things that you said about the stress, anxiety, and finding the emotional balance and all of that stuff. But a lot of people struggle. The first thing that comes when we talk about meditation is that stigma and dogma that's attached with the meditation, where you gotta be like a rishis, yogis, and all these monks who used to who meditate for hours and hours, and then you have to do hours and hours, right? So that's one. And second thing, recently a friend of mine, I was doing meditation, I was loving it, and I suggested her, hey, why don't you just get on this app and try meditation? And she was like, you know what, I just can't slow down my mind. And I mean, meditation is just not for me because I just can't slow my mind down. And I told her, like, that's why you got to be meditating, because you can't slow your mind down. And I said, just give it a shot. And yesterday she sent me this screenshot of the app, Insight Timer, telling me, like, I had this 20-day streak and I'm loving this. Thanks for introducing me to the meditation. Right. So what are some of the common myths that are out there about meditation that a lot of people have?
Right. Well, this is a great question because, no one was born meditating. Everyone had to suddenly stop, close their eyes, and do nothing. And of course, our society has said, if you're sitting there with your eyes closed, doing nothing, you're just pathetic. You're just a slacker. There's no respect going to the person who's sitting there doing nothing. But when we look at someone like, look at Gandhi, look at Oprah, look at Richard Branson, look at some of these really high-powered people. Look at Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs was a meditator. So again, proving that it doesn't make you immortal, but at least while you are here, it's really raising your vibration and the contribution that you can make to the world. So I would stress, so importantly, that so much of what we've heard, I think, prevents more people from meditating than actually encourages them. I'm big on dogs, but I'm not big on dogma. I think that my philosophy is whatever works. And we have to find, like, what works for me. Some people love mantra. Some people, want to, sit there and over go, Om Triambakam Yajama Hey, Sugandim Pushti Varinam Orvarukamiva Bandhanam Mrityor Mokshiyam Amritat. Some people, that's their mantra. Other people just want to watch their breath. Other people just want to listen to nothing and silently repeat a mantra, over and over. Whatever works. And so what I've learned over the years, and I have millions of people to meditate. I've taught, members of the Dutch Special Forces, people who work in NATO, policemen, U.S. Marines, people we would never expect to be like meditating in some way. And what we realize is that it's about showing up, and there's no wrong way. And so that's one of the number one myths. I think one of the first, the number one myth is, I don't have the time. You don't understand. I've got a job. I've got kids. I've got all these responsibilities. It's like, oh, good thing that Richard Branson doesn't have any responsibilities. Good thing Steve Jobs never had a job, or any issue. Suddenly those are just excuses. So the reality is, His Holiness the Dalai Lama said, if you think you don't have 10 minutes to connect to that stillness and silence that rests within, then you probably need a half hour. So that's because if you think you're so important that you don't have time to wait. But what people don't realize is that we do the job better when we come from a place of stillness and silence. How's this? This is a really interesting. There was a study that I checked out. They did it last year. They took video clips of 5,000 random penalty kicks in soccer matches, and just to see how long the kicker waited or how long they took their time before they actually kicked the ball. And so when the kicker of the penalty shot waited at least 10 seconds before kicking the ball, they had a 65% higher scoring rate. It goes back to Yogastha Kuru Karmani. They were establishing themselves in the present moment, getting really, really clear, and then kicking the ball. So and they, it wasn't interviewing anyone. It was just watching videos and timing. And so we know we're better when there's just a little bit of space in between. So when people say, oh, you don't understand, I'm really busy, I don't have time, I would say, oh, well, actually, this would be the best investment of time, even if it was 5 minutes, even if it was 10 minutes, even if it was 16 seconds, that you just, closed your eyes, watched your breath as you breathed in. Let's do it right now. Let's share this one technique. This is a technique that I have shared with members of the military, with cops, with people in high stressed out, high pressure jobs. I've taught this to Bank America. I've taught this to so many people around the world. So think about something that's been bothering you or disturbing you this week? Don't go too deep. This isn't therapy, but just someone said they were going to do something. They didn't. Something was supposed to happen a certain way. It didn't happen that way. Get clear on that. And now close your eyes and through your nose, take a long, slow, deep breath in and watch that breath. And when it gets to your belly, hold it there and watch it and witness it and observe it. And now release that breath and watch it as it moves up your chest, through your throat, out through your mouth, and keep watching it. Keep exhaling. Keep holding that breath out as you witness it. Keep observing it. And now breathe normally and open your eyes. And that was 16 seconds. And all of our listeners, if you were playing along, then you too.
Absolutely.
We're not thinking about that thing I just asked you to think about. I didn't say stop thinking about it. I just said close your eyes and watch your breath. So imagine in any situation, that was a 16-second meditation. So if anyone says, oh, I've never meditated, I'm afraid, boom, do that 4 times, it's a minute. Do it 20 times, it's 5 minutes. And now you have a practice. And that's a great starting point for anyone. So that number one myth is, I don't have the time. And actually, if you just took a break, we've scientifically proven that our brain needs a break every 45 minutes. It requires it. We stop paying attention. We stop really being our best version. So you think, and I've worked with engineers at Facebook who are like, they're working for like 70-hour shifts. We know if they took a break every 45 minutes to an hour, even if it was a 16-second break, they'd be rejuvenated. They'd be better. They wouldn't have to work 70 hours. They could work 60 hours. I'm not going to tell them how long they should work. But start to realize that we have the power to actually change stuff, that is coming into us. We live in a world where we don't control anything that we experience outside of us. No one can, whether it's death or depression or like all this trauma, all this horrible stuff or good stuff, no one could stop COVID from coming. No one could impact any of this stuff, but we control what we do with it. And so if you can put a little bit of space, just a little bit of a pattern interrupt between what comes in and how we show up in the world, how we respond to it, then suddenly the entire planet shifts. So number one, I don't have the time. I'm rolling my eyes. Like whatever, you don't have the time. Everyone's got the same 24 hours. It's just a question of priorities. Number two, I'm not doing it right. So many people, like they close their eyes and they go, the Buddha didn't come and visit me. His Holiness the Dalai Lama is whispering in my ear. Deepak isn't, talking to me, in my sleep. It's like, don't worry about that. Again, the magic happens after the meditation, when we're back here in the world and we are more creative and we are a better friend and we are a better parent and a better, child and a better worker and a much more clear and creative individual. We're more efficient and we're a better choice maker. I think number 3 is that if you're going to do this thing, you got to be really serious about it. You got to go into a cave, disavow money. You have to stop concerning yourself with financial wealth or anything like that. You have to, take off all your clothes and shave your head and put on robes and only give to charity and walk through the world. And we think that because back in the day, thousands of years ago, so many of the great teachers were monks. All was broken down into monks and householders. And the monks, wrote all the great books. If you look at Patanjali writing the Yoga Sutras and Adi Shankara, translating the Upanishads into the crest jewel of discrimination, suddenly we start to realize, oh, all those people who wrote all the stuff, they were monks. So of course they shaved their head. They walked around with begging bowls. It's not like the Buddha was a mergers and acquisitions advisor. The Buddha was, most of his life, he was actually begging, renouncing all material riches. But guess what? We live in a world where we have to make a car payment. We live in a world where we have to pay for our room that we live in or the house that we live in. We live in a world where we have responsibilities, financial responsibilities for utilities, for electric lights, for sending kids to college, for paying for stuff. Think of all those things. The Buddha didn't have to worry about that. They were because he had people, he had his posse out there begging as well, taking care of them. So we have to realize that we can create this beautiful fusion of this timeless body of wisdom and our real world, modern, practical application of it. We don't have to live in a cave. We don't have to disavow ourselves of all that stuff. That's a really big myth. And we don't have to take this thing so seriously. Yes, we should practice it with reverence. but we don't have to have like the serious face, like, oh, think
Mm.
of this as a ritual that we do every single day. And so there's a
Mm.
certain reverence to it. But I believe that bringing a little lightheartedness to it makes it more enjoyable and makes it something that I want
Yeah.
to show up for every single day. I don't want to suddenly have to go. And I've heard so many rules about meditation. You have to sit like this, and you have to have hand mudras like this, and you have to have a rigid spine, and you have to be in full lotus, utpludi, and you can't have your dog in the room with you. And, if anyone else comes into the room, you have to stop and kick them out. And if your back is hurting, just hang in there. Like, no. I believe comfort is queen. I believe we always want to keep moving towards comfort. Why? Because if we're comfortable, higher likelihood we'll come back and do it the next day. If it's painful
Absolutely.
and we're pretzeling ourselves and we're being in this, it's like, oh, I can hang on another 10 minutes. This is not yoga where we're trying to hang in a pose or an asana. This is a beautiful, gentle, loving, nourishing practice. And I believe it's at the core of the self-care that we need right now. I believe the power of presence is our most potent superpower. And I believe we're all mutants, like X-Men. And I believe that we have these superpowers of stillness and silence, but they need to be awakened. We need to trust that getting still just a little bit is going to bring us into the next moment at a higher velocity.
Wow. So I also realized that there were some of the things that I myself was thinking that, especially the part was, am I doing it right? Because I was always on this mindset thinking that, hey, am I doing it right? Or is this the right way to do it? Am I, sitting right? Because, my legs kind of usually get like kind of immobile after I'm done with my meditation. And I'm like, is this how I should really be sitting while I'm meditating and all that? So, but for the beginners, Davidji, one of the common problems that I see, you also mentioned about like chanting meditation, breathing meditation, and there are like a whole lot of different meditation practices that are out there, right? So how not to get lost, and especially with the like apps that we have and with so many options, the meditation is supposed to be simple. It is supposed to bring things down to a few things, but again, within the meditation app itself, like there's a lot out there. Right. So where does one begin? Like, how do I pick the one, or how do I find the right meditation for myself? That's one. Second is, so when I'm meditating, like what is advisable? Are we supposed to like meditate on one kind of practice for the longer period of time, or it's like totally okay to do one kind of practice today and another tomorrow and another tomorrow, and then just like keep hopping from one to another, regularly?
Yeah, well, I think these are really important questions. So number one, I will say the only bad meditation is the one you don't show up for. So as long as you show up, you're doing it right. So that's number one. A lot of people are like, I'm silently repeating a mantra and I'm also watching my breath, but suddenly the mantra is moving at a different speed than my breath and I'm not sure what to do and I'm confused, and suddenly that becomes their meditation and they feel like a total loser and then they stop. So those are all, bottom line, whatever works. I've got over 1,000 free guided meditations on my website. 1,000. That would mean if you did one a day, you have like a solid 3 years of a practice. I've also got courses on Insight Timer, a 30-day course, a 40-day course, so you can just keep showing up. And like, for example, my 40 days of transformation, it's 40 different unique types of meditation. So I talk for a little bit, I introduce a technique, then we meditate together. I ring the chime at the 10, 20, and 30-minute mark. So if you're like, I only want to stick around for 10 minutes, that's okay. If you want to stay longer, you can stay for 20 minutes or for 30 minutes. And at the end of that, I talk about what I call a metta moment. Metta is actually a Pali or Sanskrit word, that means unconditional loving kindness. So I have a metta moment where it's like, here's how we can take this technique and bring it out into the world on a daily basis. So something like that, you do that for 40 consecutive days. They say that, they used to think, Dr. Stephen Covey said that it takes 21 days to create a habit. Now they realize that it probably takes about 40 days to actually ingrain a habit. So something like that, that's 40 different techniques every single day. And so I believe what we don't want to do is change the technique mid-meditation. We don't want to be like, well, I started off chanting the Triambakam. And then I changed that and started following my breath. And then I came up with Aham Brahmasmi as another mantra. And then I started using, shalom. And then I switched that to, Allahu Akbar. And then suddenly by the time I finished it, there were like 30 different things. So we want to just pick one for each meditation. But tomorrow, I don't know, a mantra that I'm really enjoying for the last 2 years, and I weave it in one day a week, is the mantra Om Hum, which is an ancient Buddhist mantra, which means perfection of mind, perfection of speech, perfection of heart. And so just by repeating Om Hum, and I don't worry about my breath. When you chant a mantra, don't try to confuse it with your breath. If you want to follow your breath or watch your breath, then don't get involved with a mantra. And you said it perfectly, Vijay. Essentially, less is more. We don't need to complicate it. Pick one thing. And here's what people don't realize. We have 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts a day. That's a thought every 1.2 seconds. They are coming. You're not going to stop them. In fact, when you meditate, it might feel like there's more of them, but there's not. They're one every 1.2 seconds. But so if you suddenly find yourself, in your meditation, let's say you're going to meditate for 5 minutes and suddenly 20 seconds in, you're thinking about, stomach's grumbling. I'm hungry. What should I have? Should I go to the supermarket or should I go to a restaurant? I'm trapped in here in COVID land, so maybe I'll just have some juice. Oh, I'm not repeating the mantra. Let me gently drift back. And what people don't realize is the masters of meditation know that every meditation is a gentle drifting back and forth between whatever the object of your attention is, whether that's your breath or a mantra or something else,
your thoughts.
And it's this drifting back and forth. And as you cultivate your ability, and that means showing up every day, you spend a little less time in thought land and a little more time in breath or mantra land. That's it. And so what we're doing is we're cultivating our ability to witness. So when we open our eyes, now I can witness the world with a lot less reactivity. I won't take things so personally. I'll be more impeccable with my word. Don Miguel Ruiz's 4 agreements are a perfect, expression of these aspects. I'll always show up and do my best. Suddenly we start to realize that it's a gentle, loving, sweet process. Now I'm from Queens. I'm from New York. So we're like high achievers, we're also control freaks. So a lot of people who are control freaks or high velocity performers, just like you, Vijay, we're sort of like, I don't want to surrender. I want to be in control here. Let me just get this thing done. I know what I'm doing, But if we are just willing to surrender just a little bit, the phrase I like to use is global domination through surrender. So that's what I want to do. I want to get so aligned with the universal flow that I have the universe at my back, that I have, that I'm not fighting a headwind that's coming into me. And so it's just showing up. Sometimes I have amazing meditations where I see colors and all sorts of amazing things. Other times, all I'm doing is thinking about what I'm going to have for breakfast. Other times, sitting there and I have no thoughts. Suddenly I'm just like, oh, it's over. It felt like it was a second and it was, a half hour.
Absolutely.
So they're all going to be different. And so we will have the dog barking meditation. We're going to have the planes flying overhead meditation. We're going to have the I'm replaying that conversation in my head meditation. We're going to have the I'm so freaking mad at that person. When I finish this meditation, I'm going to punch them in the nose meditation. We're going to have all those meditations. And if we show up once in the morning and once in the afternoon, and you get to choose how long you want to do that for. But if you do the bookends of your day, it's really, really powerful. And if you say, oh, I don't have 5 minutes in the afternoon to let go of everything I've absorbed over the course of the day that no longer serves me, like, really? You don't have 5 minutes to let go of all your baggage? I think you do. And if you're like, oh, I don't have 10 minutes in the morning to set my course, to type in the address on my GPS that's inside of me so I can move in the right direction. Well, then you're just sort of just like, you're like waking up and you're just like being like the victim of whatever comes into your inbox, whatever someone tells you. We want to wake up and be more intentional with our lives, more purposeful with our lives. And meditation can really set the groundwork for that on a daily basis. So we've proven the physical benefits. We've proven the emotional benefits of it. We know that we've proven the mental benefits that help us be more successful in life. It's like, really? And you're going to come up with an excuse? You have time for social media and for Netflix, but you don't have time to like strengthen yourself and give yourself some self-care? I don't buy it.
Absolutely. And also, what I hear you say, davidji, when it comes to picking the right meditation for you, going back to the way I look at it, like if any particular day, if I'm feeling low and if I need to raise my vibration higher, then I wouldn't usually go on like a calm kind of a meditation because I want to raise my vibration. And that's where I go like a chanting mantra, which like really raise my vibration and, makes me more excited. And maybe, so when I'm feeling like calmer or maybe relaxed or maybe more anxiety and so on and so forth, then that's when I want to like slow down and, do a breathing meditation. And I just, based on the mood on that particular day, I just, pick the time like, okay, today I don't feel like sitting down for 30 minutes and I just want to do like 5 minutes of quick meditation because I just want to show up. So that's like been one thing that now I'm, trying to say that, this is non-negotiable thing that I want to do on every single day, even if it's like for 3 minutes or 5 minutes, or even if I don't feel like just sitting down and calming, then I would like go and listen to the mantra and like, chant it loud. And then I'm done like 5 minutes and it like really, gets me excited. And I still did that. I still, showed for the practice. So what you're trying to say also is that how people should really be picking up the meditation from a lot of meditations that are out there when they go up, especially on again, I'll come to the guided and non-guided meditation practices. So for the beginners, and I'm sure guided might be the way to get started with, and eventually they can move with the self-meditation. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I think, everyone's got a different thing that resonates with them. In most of my meditations, I start with a little music and I talk while there's music. But when I introduce the technique, I like us to be in stillness and silence. And a lot of people say, no, I need soothing, calming music. Well, the Buddha didn't have soothing, calming music, okay? People who really, founded this and who elevated it, they had noises around them as well. And they didn't necessarily have music, in there. So I'll start with some music, then I'll fade the music out, and then we'll go into stillness and silence together. And that's where we connect to the stillness and silence that rests within. And then we'll come out of that after using the technique. And a lot of people say, no, I can't sit silently for 5 minutes. And I will reply to them, if you don't want to be with yourself alone for 5 minutes, highly unlikely anyone else wants to be hanging out with you either. So why don't you cultivate your ability to actually be with yourself? So much magnificence. I've learned so much about life just by sitting and doing nothing. I've made such better decisions. I was about to make this decision and then, I meditated and I'm like, oh, I see the problem totally differently now. I see it so much more clearly. It wasn't really me making that decision. It was like chemicals and hormones from a fight-flight, emotional fight-flight. There's actually a term for that. Emotional fight-flight is called reactive or ego response. So we have fight-flight response, and then we've got this emotional, reactive ego response. They're the same thing. They're driven by chemicals and hormones. And if you're not needing to like save your life, why would you act like you have to? So what meditation also does, and this is so important, it allows us to respond a little more proportionately to what's coming in. You ever have like an argument with someone in the morning and like 6 hours later, someone asks you if you want a cup of coffee and you're like, no, I don't want a cup of coffee. What's wrong with you? They call that emotional leakage. It's 6 hours later. You heard that thing already happened. But if that's why we meditate, that second meditation of the day, to sort of let go of that. No one wants to have an argument at 8 o'clock in the morning and then 10 hours later be talking about it still, and we don't spend enough time. None of us, I would say, safe to assume, the majority of people on this planet at the end of the day don't say, what did I learn about myself today? What did I learn about life? We don't do that. No one's doing that. We're like waking up, burning through the day, passing out. Waking up, burning through the day, passing out. Waking up, burning through the day, passing out. And then one day we die. So like, why not take a little space? You don't have to reflect on everything that came in, but how about just connect to that stillness and silence? I call it taking a time in. Take a time in here. Not a timeout, because it doesn't separate you from the world. It brings you closer to source, which is resting inside.
Incredible. So now I think we have covered a lot about, getting started with meditation, how people can get started, finding the time if you are making the excuses saying that I don't have time, and also picking the right meditation or, just to go and explore and see what works best for you, right? I think you have already given like a 16-second meditation, which is like super quick and super easy for people to get started with. And then you can eventually, as davidji said, you do it for like once, then it's like a 16-second. You do it 5 times, then you have like a minute practice. And then you do that and then build that habit of being there, showing up every single morning. Awesome.
Let me just share another one that everyone could benefit from. So everyone close your eyes and just watch your breath. Don't hold it necessarily, but as it flows in, just witness it as it comes into you, as it goes into your body. And watch it as you exhale, as it flows back out. And just keep noticing. Notice that your mind is calming just a little bit. Notice that your body is relaxing just a little bit. You're just watching your breath. We're not doing anything with it. We're just witnessing. We're just noticing. Maybe you notice the depth of your inhale, or how your chest rises as you inhale, and how your belly eases as you exhale. And that's really all we're doing right now, is just paying attention to the flow of our breath. And now begin to paint a ribbon of breath in the shape of an infinity sign. If you're not sure what that is, it's a sort of like an 8 laying on its side. And just watch as you paint a ribbon of breath flowing through that infinity sign. There's no right speed, no right pace, whatever feels right to you. And you're just flowing that breath through the infinity sign. And it would be normal for you to drift away to thoughts or sounds or physical sensations. That's okay. When you suddenly realize that you've drifted away, ever so gently come back to painting a ribbon of breath in the shape of an infinity sign. There's nowhere else to be. There's nothing else to do except to be right here, right now, in this sacred, precious present moment. And now take a long, slow, deep breath in and gently let that go. And when it feels comfortable, open your eyes. So again, so easy, right? And again, all we did was introduce a pattern interrupt, just a little bit of a break in the action. And this has been scientifically proven to nourish us at so many different levels. And so you have 2 tools. You have 16 seconds, which you can amplify that up. You can simply just watch your breath. Actually, it's 3 tools. Or you can use this infinity breath. Some people use that to go to sleep when they can't sleep at night. Some people use it when someone's pushing their button and really irritating them. Some people do that when their boss is driving them crazy, or their spouse or boyfriend or girlfriend is driving them crazy. So these tools, they're so easy and no equipment is necessary. And so, I would encourage people just to start small. It's always about frequency, not duration. Better to show up 7 days a week for 5 minutes than once a week for 45 minutes. Because we're cultivating something. We want to get our brain, we want to get our body, we want to get our mind, really just comfortable with the thing. How's that feel, Vijay?
Yes. So thank you so much for that one. And I felt like I'm going back at like meditating on one of the davidji's guided meditation. And it was like a very beautiful experience. And I'm really, feeling like honored to be doing it live here with you, davidji. Thank you so much for that. That was so amazing practice. That was amazing. So the next thing that I want to talk about, as of now on our conversation, we looked at aspects of slowing down and calming and, having better control over our emotions through meditation as a practice doing on a regular basis. So can we manifest our dreams using the power of meditation?
This is a great question. We would all agree that we get to program our lives. Again, we don't control all the other stuff that happens outside of us, but we can pretty much control the direction of our lives. Bhagavad Gita, chapter 2, verse 47. We have total control over our own actions, but no control over the fruit of those actions. Imagine that. So, because we don't control, like we could be the best kisser in the world. We could be the greatest kisser on the planet. Okay. But you could be laying a kiss on somebody and they could be like yawning or tired or looking at their watch or distracted and they're not going to respond the way you want. So we don't control the responses. We control our own actions. So that's like a really important thing for us to realize. So let's get the most stuff going behind that. So I think the foundation of that is like an obvious process to this. There's attention, there's intention, and then there's action. Attention, intention, and action. If you just have attention and intention and no action, it's wishful thinking. I write about this a lot in my book, Sacred Powers. If you just have intention and action, you don't have that attention, that groundedness to help you do this. And if you just have attention and action and no intention, it's random. So what we need is first the attention. We need to get still so that we're not conditioned, so that there's truly infinite possibilities, pure potentiality in that moment, as opposed to me just doing what I've always done or living how I've always lived or responding like I've always responded, on autopilot. So if we can get still, spend a few minutes in stillness and silence. And then if during that process, we can invite an intention. Now, what's an intention? An intention can be a state of mind, a state of being, a trait, a quality, a characteristic that you'd like a little more of in your life. I'd like to show up a little more kind. I'd like to show up a little more bold. I'd like to undim my light right now. I'd like to be more forgiving of a person. I'd like to be more patient. Pick the thing, pick your archetype or pick whatever that trait, quality, or characteristic is. And so that's one thing. And intention can also be a step. It can be a state of mind, a state of being, but it can also be a step, a real world action step that we're going to take to bring us a little bit closer to the fulfillment of our dreams and desires. So when we get still, then we invite an intention. So you could choose. What do you want in that moment? Do you want this to be a step? And don't make this about someone else. Like if you're like, well, I want my cousin to stop smoking. It's like, no, I need to be more compelling when I talk to my cousin, or I need to let it go and let that person make their own choices. That's what I need to do, not that other thing. So it's even if you want someone else to heal, someone's sick and you want them to heal, that's a beautiful sentiment. Well, what can I do? Maybe I can call them. Maybe I can reach out to them. Maybe I can send, positive energy to them. Maybe I can visit them in the hospital or visit them in their home. So suddenly this is only about us. So if we can then invite an intention, a state or a step into our awareness when we're in that state of stillness and invite it in and plant that, and of course, let go of the outcome because we don't control the outcome. We only control our behavior, our activity, our own, what's within my two hands, my voice, my feet, that's my brain. That's all I got. So we release our attachment to the outcome. No differently than if you planted a seed in your garden, but Jay, I see these two plants behind you, whatever you did, I'm sure they were a lot smaller when you put them in their pots. You didn't stare at them all day long. You didn't move around the soil, and start, pushing it around. You planted them, and you watered them, you nourished them, you let them get sunlight. And guess what? Over time, they grow. Same thing with the seeds we plant inside. In Sanskrit, they call that sankalpa or sankalp. Sankalpa, sankalp. And that's a subtle intention. Once we've planted it inside, and if we continue to plant that same intention on a daily basis, and then we go into our meditation. So we get still, we invite the intention in, then we meditate. We don't have to meditate on that thing. We can use a separate, how do we nourish the intention? Every time we connect to the stillness and silence that rests within, we nourish that intention. No differently than those plants behind you. We give it light, we give it some water, we give it some food, and ultimately our inner dialogue becomes our outer dialogue. And ultimately our outer dialogue becomes our actions. And ultimately our actions flow into our life. And so I believe we absolutely can manifest our dreams and desires, but you can't just be like a wishful thinker, and you can't force yourself through that too. Especially high achievers are always like, let me power through, more effort, more focus. Like I said, global domination through surrender. How still can, there's a beautiful line by Lao Tzu, 5,000-year-old line by the ancient Chinese philosopher. Do you have the patience to wait until your mud settles and the water is clear? But there's a second part to that quote that most people don't know about, haven't gone that far, because it's not a meme on social media. The second part, can you remain unmoving till the right action arises by itself? And that's based on you planting the seed, being prepared, and then the moment unfolds, and then you take action. And so that's like such a powerful teaching and lesson there. So yes, of course, we can manifest our dreams and desires, but just like we manifested COVID, we manifested this. Every single person on this planet, 7.6 billion people on this planet, at some point said, I wish things would just slow down a little bit. I wish I could just take a break. I wish I could just step away from all of my responsibilities. I wish I didn't have to go to work today. I wish all those cars would stop polluting everything. Well, guess what? Boom. We absolutely created that. It didn't show up as we anticipated, but we manifested that. So that's why it's really important that when you are manifesting, know that it's going to happen. So don't be frivolous with your manifesting.
Beautifully put. So I'm having this, such a beautiful moment right now in this conversation. I'm like just feeling like just keep quiet and just keep listening to you, because the things that you're sharing is making a lot of sense. And it's like, I'm really enjoying this conversation, davidji. So you have this sweet spot community. What do you mean by sweet spot and what that community is all about?
Well, I live in Southern California. I'm not from here, but I've been living here now since 2003. And for those of you like unaware, it's like perfect weather, 10 months a year. This is like the land of skateboarding. Wow. This is the land of bicycling. This is the land, we're on the beach, we're on the ocean. I'm like 8 minutes away from swimming in the ocean every day. It's a little too cold for me right now. But this is like that place where, like right now I'm breathing ocean air. The warmth, about 10 miles away is this mountain range. And on the other side of that mountain range is this giant desert in California. So the warmth of the desert is coming in and the ocean air is coming in, and they meet like right here. So I've always called that, that's the beautiful fusion. That's the sweet spot of the universe. So I created a sweet spot community because I figure wherever you are, you've got some kind of fusion of something as well. It may not be the warmth and it may not be the ocean, but maybe it's something else. Maybe it's amazing people, or maybe it's the greatest job opportunity in the world. Maybe it's, family, or I don't know. But so I just started calling my community the Sweet Spot Community. We're over 1 million people now, and these are people who care about meditation. Wow. These are people who are into personal development. These are people who are, growth is important to them. Healing is important. I think all of us are on some kind of healing journey, trying to heal some kind of pain from our past, whether it's physical or emotional. So I have sent out a video and a free guided meditation every single weekend since 2010. So that's been to that community. That's allowed me to connect to so many people around the world, because I don't know. I just think I want to hang out with people who feel the same way about the world, planet, how we can help each other. And so these are people from every walk of life. And I believe that for wholeness to occur in someone's life, you need the physical, the emotional, you need the material and financial, you need the relationship, and you need the spiritual components. You need all of those. So I believe that we can take care of our bodies, take care of our hearts at the same time, that we can experience abundance, material abundance in our lives, that we can take our relationships to a higher level, letting go of relationships that don't serve us and elevating those relationships and recognizing who's in our front row and being in the front row of other people to support them. And I believe that we are all these children of the divine, and that we can have a relationship with a higher power, a divine creator, God, whatever you want to call that, because we all come from such different cultures. But I believe that there's something distinctly bigger than me, And I believe that I'm not separate from it. If you go back to the ancient Indian texts, the Mahavakyas, Maha means master, Vakya means saying. The Mahavakyas, we're going back like 7,000 years old. The first one is Aham Brahmasmi. And I like to say Aham Brahmasmi, baby, because Aham Brahmasmi essentially means I am the universe. Doesn't mean I'm God, but it means I'm an expression of the divine. And so let me vibrate at a higher level. Let me allow, remember, we're all mutants with these superpowers. Let me awaken, my superpowers of the present moment, of trust, of gratitude, of compassion, of love. Let me awaken those and flow through the world, because I believe that we transform the world by transforming ourselves. So I believe we can always continue to do that on a daily basis.
Fascinating. So on the side note, Davidji, a lot of people who will be listening to this podcast are from India, and they might be really fascinated by you throwing all these slokas from the Sanskrit. So do you know Sanskrit?
I have been a Sanskrit student for about 16 years, and I've been reading the Gita every day. I have about 30 different translations of the Gita. I have Paramahansa Yogananda's, and I have Maharishi's, translation, and like all these different translations scattered around my house. And what I'll do is I'll just say, I think I'll turn on Netflix. But first, let me just open up the Gita and read. It's suddenly like just popping in to, here I am under chapter 7, verse 5. Besides these, O mighty armed Arjuna, there is another superior energy of mind, which comprises the living entities who are exploiting the resources of this material inferior nature. And so it's like apara yam ita tu anyam, just like love it. And so, no one has spoken Sanskrit as a conversational language in like 500 years. So it's so great to have, to touch on that. It's like feeling history. It's like touching the source. And I've been to Kurukshetra, and I've spent a lot of time in India. I go to India, a couple of times a year, and take groups there, to go from, the lowest part of India, the most southern part, up into Kathmandu, and every place in between. And so that's, I've been doing that now, for a while. And I have this great, affection for the energy and the essence that has been rippling through the Indian subcontinent for thousands and thousands. This is the source. It's the source of meditation. It's the source of yoga. It's the source of, and when I say yoga, I don't mean the physical practice. I mean of oneness, of really understanding and practicing all of our, deep connections. That's how we awaken Gyan Yoga and Karma Yoga and Bhakti Yoga and Raj Yoga. That's how we truly expand ourselves, walking through the world. So I think everyone should be given props to India and to the fact that it is that source material for so much of our growth and understanding.
Beautiful. That's so refreshing to hear. All right. So now I have this round called Enlightening Round, where it's a kind of a rapid fire round site where you're going to give like a shorter, quicker answers to the questions. I've got like a couple of questions. All right. So are you ready for this?
I am ready.
All right. So what inspires you to do everything that you do?
Well, when I was in India my very first time, I did visit the Nadi palm leaf reader, who told me the moment of my death and how I will die and when that will occur. And so I know the clock is ticking. So every single morning I wake up and I'm like, come on, let's bring it. All right. Clock is ticking. So that's a good spark.
Wow. Which one daily habit do you believe has been game changer for you in your success journey?
It's got to be meditation. I believe meditation, setting that trajectory from a place of stillness and silence every single day and planting seeds into that fertile soil and then bringing it. There's nothing close. I know that I am so much better on meditation. So it's got to be meditation.
Best piece of advice you have received in your life?
My mother, right before she died, she said to me, whatever you do, she gave me a copy of James Joyce's Ulysses, which is about somebody, the journey of Ulysses. It's the hero's journey. And she said, don't ever stop. She said, keep journeying and keep trusting the journey. So I have. I guess it's worked so far.
Beautiful. What was the one wrong belief about yourself that you have held for the longest time in your life?
There was an extended period of time where I really believed that because I had a dream and set a course and been on that path, that I had to stick with that. And so I had believed as the Bhagavad Gita tells us so often, that each of us has a purpose for being here. And I've learned that, yes, that may be true, but I believe that we have the ability to shift gears and transmute our karma and suddenly place ourselves in positions that would never have been forecast in the past and rebirth ourselves, reawaken ourselves, and have new Dharma arcs. And so that belief of thinking, oh no, I'm here for one purpose. Let me figure out what it is and let me deliver the goods. And now I believe that there are many, many Dri arcs, D-H-R-I, Dri arcs. Sanskrit word, it's so ancient. It used to be the force. Imagine this. We understand gravity and we understand electricity, these forces of nature. Dri is the force in ancient times that held the stars apart, infinitely pushing them apart, and yet simultaneously held the entire universe together. Imagine a force that could provide this polarity of pushing the stars apart and holding the universe together. And I believe each of us, that was called Dri. If you translate that from the Sanskrit, it means that which upholds. And so I believe each of us has our own personal Dri in a given moment. And so sometimes that could last for 6 months or 6 years, and then it ends. And another Dri arc, another thing that upholds us, unfolds. So that was, for me, that was the mind blower when I suddenly realized, yes, we may have an overarching Dharma purpose for being here, but I believe as we go through our various stages and phases of life, we have these unique, specific reasons for being here. Blew my mind. It came to me in a meditation, actually.
What do you want to be remembered for?
I would love if I was remembered by everyone who ever came in contact with me as like, hey, that was the guy who got me on that meditation thing. That was the guy who sparked my meditation practice. I would love that.
Awesome. So, Davidji, could you share a book or two that has, helped you? And you have mentioned already about Bhagavad Gita, but there are any other book that has influenced you and that you would like to recommend to the listeners listening to the podcast?
Yeah, sure. There's a great book by Ram Dass called Paths to God. And it's almost like complimentary reading to the Gita. That's a brilliant book. Someplace around here. Yeah, maybe this is it. This has been a great book. We've all heard of like the hero's journey. And so Joseph Campbell's The Hero with a Thousand Faces. Really,
Wow.
really, deep dive into that. I'm a fan of Pema Chodron. She's the first American Buddhist nun. And she wrote a great book. She's written many, many great books. But she wrote the book, When Things Fall Apart. So if you're in crisis or if things suddenly have turned to crap, that's a great book it's an easy read and she's powerful. And of course, my most recent book, Sacred Powers. And a book that, if you're an engineer or in the corporate world, my book, De-Stressifying, which is a very secular exploration of how we can better meet our needs, how we can communicate more consciously, how we can find our purpose in life, how we can elevate our awareness, and how we can sort of increase our emotional intelligence.
Beautiful. So I have one last question for you, Davidji. But, as I already mentioned in the beginning, you have got a lot of free guided meditation practices that are out there on your website, on Insight Timer, on SoundCloud, YouTube, and all the, these different places. But if people would like to get in touch with you or learn more about meditation or maybe get into the meditation practice, what would be the best possible way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, they could all follow me on Instagram at davidji meditation, or they can follow me on Facebook. And that would be my handle on Facebook. My davidji page is facebook.com/flow of love. Or you can just look for davidji. But I'm wherever you are, wherever anyone is on the planet, whether it's Spotify, whether it's Apple Music, whether it's Amazon, pick the thing. I will meet you where you are.
Beautiful. If you guys have been listening to my podcast, I've been on one of the episodes, I recommended Insight Timer. And if you are on that particular app, go and check his meditation out or go to Davidji's website. He has got a lot of meditations on his website, and maybe be part of the Sweet Spot community where you get these weekly meditations from Davidji, and you have seen these 2 mini meditation practices that Davidji shared on this episode, and you are gonna enjoy the full-fledged meditation. When Davidji guide you through that, from healing to raising your vibration to surrendering to the inner silence. You name it, and he has got the meditation for it. It's been a great conversation with you, davidji. Here's my last question for you. Imagine that you are standing on a stadium, and this one is the largest stadium that has ever been built in the history of the world. And there are millions and millions of people on that stadium. And every single seat on that stadium is like occupied. And there you are on the stage, and you have to share the most important lesson that you have learned in your life in 1 minute. What would be your message?
Every moment is a choice. We are beings of free will, and we actually have choices. And it's always a decision. What shall I choose at this moment? Shall I choose grace? Shall I choose love? Shall I choose purpose? Or shall I choose anger? Shall I choose darkness? Shall I choose irritation? And it's a choice. And, we have to always be asking ourselves, which wolf am I going to feed? The good wolf or the bad wolf? And when we fail, we get to stand back up, rise from the ashes, and choose again. And so I would just say, remember to get still and then choose. So my final line of that 60 seconds would be yoga sta, guru karmani. Establish yourself in the present moment and then perform action.
Beautiful. It has been a phenomenal conversation with you, davidji. Thank you so much for being on the show. It's been a real honor and pleasure in having you here and listening to you. And it's almost like, as I mentioned before, like I enjoyed this conversation so much. I was feeling like I just let davidji speak, and I just want to be like quiet and just listen to you. You have got a lot of wisdom to share with the world. Thank you so much for sharing with our listeners today.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me on. Remember to stay safe. Remember to nourish yourself, and keep doing what you're doing, Vijay.
Thank you. Thank you so much for listening to this conversation with davidji. I hope you learned something or got some inspiration from the episode. If you did, please share this episode with your friends by visiting the show notes page at theinspiringtalk.com/97. And as you know, we are soon hitting 100 episodes of the podcast. I would love to know, what do you feel about this show? I invite you to share your feedback, and if you have some personal transformation stories, or I invite you to share your feedback, and if you have some personal transformation stories, or if this show in any way have helped you, I would love to hear from you. You can send me a voice message by visiting theinspiringtalk.com/speak. I'll repeat that. theinspiringtalk.com/SPEAK. Speak. Go ahead and record your message right away, and I might feature some of those in the upcoming episodes. Thank you so much for listening, and I'll catch you in the next. Now, go out there and do something inspiring.